to a level of normal unhappiness. So in other words, even the normal person is to a certain degree neurotic, that is accepted by modern psychologists. And the Buddha pointed out that the normal person is insane. Sabbe putujjana ummattaka. That means even the normal person is not fully mentally healthy. So perfect mental health is possible only through what the Buddhists call the Arahant. Arahant is a disciple of the Buddha who has reached the state of perfection, which might call psychological perfection or spiritual perfection, or whatever term you use. It is that state of the perfect mind. The mind in Buddhism, what we are trying to achieve is to perfect the mind, the mental process. So this is why Buddhism is more of a psychology. But there is another way of understanding Buddhism. I see Buddhism as a process of evolution. Now, we have no conflict with Darwin's theory of evolution or the scientific theory of evolution, because evolution starts with a mistake. That's how we see it. The mistake is that a certain molecule began at the beginning, which had a special property, and that special property was that this molecule was able to absorb atoms from its surroundings and produce molecules of its own kind. And so this ability, of course, was the beginning of life. But the thing is that every molecule that is formed is not permanent. It is destroyed. And when the molecule is destroyed, certain amount of energy is released. And that energy is again used to produce new molecules. So this process goes on, a breaking down process and a building up process. The building up process is called anabolism, and the breaking down process is called catabolism. Both together, the both processes are called metabolism. So you see, two processes going on at the same time, but it is a birth and the death, the birth and the death, and this goes on. And this whole process is what is called the struggle for existence. So it is a struggle to exist, but ultimately nothing really exists. So to put it in the Buddhist terminology, we see that this whole process, which is not consciously done, it is unconsciously happening due to the presence of the necessary conditions. The principle of determinism, which is that everything that occurs in the world occurs due to the presence of the necessary conditions. So when the necessary conditions are present, it happens. So it is that same principle that is going on. It's not done by some special person called the creator. It's just happening due to the presence of the necessary conditions. And whatever is happening, it is simply, although it is not done by a conscious purpose, but it is an effort to become permanent in an impermanent world. So this whole process called life is going on against the principle of impermanence, that everything is permanent, everything is impermanent, and there is the struggle for existence, which is a struggle to keep on existing, which is the struggle to become permanent in an impermanent world. But somehow this process gradually keeps on continuing, and the result is the process of evolution. And this evolution takes place till the human being is evolved. When the human being is evolved, the human being has what are called the five senses: the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body. And these five senses are aware of a world. It is through the senses that we become aware of a world. In other words, we become conscious of a world. And we also begin to become conscious of a self that is aware of these things. So the thought of self becomes another concept. And these two concepts, the self as the subjective concept and the world as an objective concept, and this leads to a self-consciousness, which is that we are living in a world, that is, a self is living in the world. And with this consciousness begins all emotional relationships. We become attached to things, we begin to think in terms of properties. This is my property, and we begin to share the world, or we live in the world. But at the same time we also begin to fight with others, and quarreling starts, and wars begin by a collective fight in the form of a war. And so we think in terms of nations. We have feelings called patriotism, and all these things come up with the awareness of a self living in a world.